Awesome. Thanks, Max. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. I think we've been using the chat. I know they've been using the chat to say hi and share where you're from. So if you can type in there while we're waiting, I'm going to give everyone about 2 to 3 minutes to join. So hi from London. Hello, New York, Phoenix. Awesome. Yeah. So put in there. I am in Washington State on the West Coast of the US in a small town out here. Hope everyone's doing well with working from home and remote. I know our team is fully remote right now. Scottsdale, Arizona, awesome. So yeah, I'm just gonna pause, mute myself just for 1 second while we wait for everyone else to join. Awesome. Let's see. Hello, Amy from London. A couple London folks. I was actually out over there in November of last year speaking at the product marketing conference. So a little bit of a different format this year. Let's see. Hello. Awesome. Yeah, so for those of you who just joined, we're just putting in the chat where everyone's from so we can see where we've got folks. Sounds like we've got folks from all over the US, from London. We'll just give everyone another minute to join. Hello in Manchester. I was out there maybe 5 years ago when I worked at Etsy doing some market research, which was super fun. Okay. I think I'm going to go ahead and get started now that we're a couple minutes past the hour. So thanks for everyone who's on the call. It's great to speak with y'all. My name is Brittany Clark. I am a VP of Product Marketing and Content Strategy over at Diligent Corporation. I've been there for coming up on a year. Diligent is a modern governance company, and we like to say probably one of the larger tech companies most people have not heard of. We serve a large audience of public companies as well as nonprofit and public sector companies. Over 16,000 organizations use our products, including about half of the largest corporations in the world. We have over 700,000 board directors that use our products. So we serve a market that is about modern governance. We help companies govern and release products and solutions in that market. So today's talk is not about specifically Diligent. It's about how I have built and scaled product marketing functions across different organizations, but happy to answer questions and just wanted to kind of give a high level overview of what Diligent does. Let's see who else we have joined. Okay, someone else from London, Manchester. Awesome to see everyone. Great. So let's get started. In terms of my background, I want to just kind of share this because I think as we get into Q&A, happy to answer questions from any of these different perspectives. But I started my career in product marketing at GE, where I ran a product line there. So obviously at the time, one of the biggest companies in the world with 330,000 employees. I then moved to Etsy, which at that point in time was more of a startup, around 200 employees. And Etsy serves both B2B and B2C. So a lot of experience there. And I worked on product marketing on the product marketing function for about 6 years at Etsy through the time that we IPO'd. And then I moved over to MailChimp, which is a privately held company based out of Atlanta, Georgia. It is about 1,000 employees. It continues to be privately held, no intention of going public or selling off. So it's a really interesting business model, mostly in the B2B space, serving a very similar audience to Etsy when it comes to businesses, which is kind of micro entrepreneurs. So a lot of businesses with under 10 employees, but mostly under 200, between 1 and 200 employees. And then about a year ago, moved over to Diligent, which is a modern governance company, which I mentioned. We started out by providing board portal software to corporations and have kind of expanded our solution set. And really the company has started really investing in product marketing over the past 1 to 2 years. And it's been really exciting to see the transformation there. So at all of these different organizations, I have worked in a product marketing capacity. And what I am going to talk about today during this talk is how I've kind of distilled what it means to build and scale a product marketing function into 8 different steps. So we'll get into that in 1 second. I did want to say periodically throughout the talk, I've got a couple polls that I want to ask everyone on the chat to see what our responses are, and we can make this more of an open Q&A. So as the sections kind of wrap, I'll pause and ask questions so we can make this a little bit more interactive instead of me just talking at you for 30 minutes. So please engage, ask questions. Welcome from DC and Denver as well. Okay, great. So with that, I like to kick off by talking a little bit about my product philosophy. And I think these are things that no matter what organization I'm at has helped us to succeed and win in the market. I think the first thing is that great products are really what underpin great brands. So I know, in product marketing, we work a lot with our brand counterparts. And I think great brand campaigns can stand on their own, but, in order to really grow a market and to really be a market leader, which a lot of the companies I've worked at have been, it has to be served with a great product. The second note is commitment to your truest fans drives word of mouth. And, when you think about who your truest fans are, it's the people who've been on your platform, who continue to use it, the super users. Those are the people who really find value in your product. And I think maintaining commitment to them, even while you're evolving beyond serving your core audience, I think is number one, especially for a product marketer to think about. Number 3 is the entire customer experience matters. And I think for a product marketer, we can often get siloed into thinking about a product release and kind of what materials are involved in getting new product out to market. But we need to take a step back and look at everything from the customer's first touch points, whether that's thought leadership, paid advertising, but all the way through that funnel, through to, enablement support for our sales leaders or for our sales team, as well as support documentation. All of those touch points are what are going to make you and your product successful. Fourth thing is that companies need crystallized differentiation points, and we'll get into some notes on how to do that. But really thinking about what makes your product different, what sets you apart from the market. And I think finding that at the core of your company, as opposed to looking outside to find out what that differentiation point is. And we'll talk about that a little more as well. And then finally, retention is critical from day one. So how do you retain those users? We all know how much more expensive it is to find a new user than to keep your existing customers. And that's something that I think, the product marketers who focus on retention as well as finding net new customers tend to also have really good track records. So I'm going to stop there talking about kind of me and my experience and pivot to talking about the one thing. And I will say GIFs I don't think have uploaded because this is a PDF. So I will try to explain the GIFs that are in here. But when I think about a product marketer and our role, we are often in between product management, designers, sales enablement, our sales leaders, the different marketing functions, brand campaigns, business development. And we sit in this space that often feels, and this GIF animates, it feels like a pinball machine where you're kind of being bounced around all these different places. And I think, it's very common for me, for people that I work with, for people on my team to kind of feel like we're running around like a chicken with our head cut off. And so what we constantly try to do is prioritize. And that's what I hope this talk will help you do is kind of think about the 4 big buckets of work that product marketers should be thinking about and kind of assess where you are on these 4 different with these 4 different buckets of work and hopefully try to kind of rein in all that madness and all the noise that you hear to keep yourself, focused and really try to make an impact. So the 4 buckets are first understanding our customers. So we're going to start with where the revenue comes from and where the value comes from, which is our customers. Secondly is understanding the market. Third is building strong relationships internally which I think is absolutely critical for product marketers to be successful. And then finally, creating your vision for either product marketing as a function or for yourself as a product marketer. So with that, I am going to open up the first poll there. Okay, so the question I would like to know is, what's the hardest aspect of building out product marketing to you for across these four different areas? Understanding customers, knowing the market, building strong relationships, and creating a vision for the team. Knowing that different organizations have different resources to support, particularly the first two. Neck and neck right now. Let's see. Knowing the market, building strong relationships. Everything's got some votes, kind of tied. All right, give it 10 more seconds. I think for me, just while we're waiting for folks to vote, the two things that I feel are the hardest are understanding customers and knowing the market. Between those two, I think it really is a toss-up as to what resources and technology the organization has in place. There are some really great platforms that help you kind of get market intel on a quantitative level, but not have to go out and do that work that I think can help with knowing the market. Understanding customers, I think, is still just very challenging, and you gotta roll up your sleeves and spend a lot of time. So let's see, let's close it down. Okay, so we've got kind of, let's see, kind of all neck and neck, but it looks like creating vision for the team is eked out. So we'll touch on all these topics as we go through, but good to know where folks kind of stand. Can y'all see the results of the survey if someone can say in the chat? Let's see. Well, anyway, okay, well, we'll continue. So in terms of, okay, y'all can see, awesome. Okay, so let's start with understanding your customers, and I've kind of broken these down into several different bullet points. So we'll get through the 8 steps within each of these 4 buckets. The first bucket is understanding our customers, and there's really 3 sections there. The first is defining your target audience. Second is figuring out what words you want to use to speak to those customers. And then finally, identifying the most impactful channels for your business. So in terms of defining your audience, I think there's kind of 2 different, it's a continuum, and there's 2 different ways we go about defining our target audience. We've got our qualitative ways of getting feedback, and then quantitative. When it comes to qualitative, this is something that's very easy to do, whether you're just starting out as a product marketer or whether you're a bit more seasoned in your career. Conducting customer interviews, looking at all the review sites, conducting internal interviews. I don't know whether anyone out there, feel free to ping in the channel, has access to a tool called Gong. It's something that we're using right now with a lot of success that basically records sales calls and allows us to tag them and listen in after the fact. So I know my team has been using that a lot to gather customer feedback and really understand what customers are saying while they're in the process or while they're in pipeline or getting a demo, which is really exciting. And then also there's often UX projects that the design team is leading where you are speaking to customers. Probably it's not you leading those conversations, but we can listen in as product marketers and hear what the customers are saying, and hopefully also ask questions and get some of our questions into those rounds of research. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there's quantitative research. And I put this in here. I think the first thing that people often want to do is like some sort of either a segmentation study or a brand survey or a product survey. And these are expensive projects. So I should say 200K, but it can be hundreds of thousands of dollars depending on the volume of your customers and kind of how deep you're looking to go. It's expensive and not all organizations can do it. So I put it on here because I think if you have the budget for it and you can work with a reputable research agency, it can give you a ton of powerful insights. But it is expensive and it is a lot of work to maintain. So I know at MailChimp and Etsy, we had a market research team that was able to kind of lead these studies with input from product marketing. At Diligent, product marketing would be leading the study ourselves, with an outside agency, and that just takes a lot of time and effort. So it's something that we will probably do down the road, and we have done in the past, but it's not something that we're doing right now. But there are other ways to get quantitative feedback on your audience, like analyzing support volume. Another thing that we do is, or that we're looking at, I don't know whether y'all have Showpad, but it's Showpad is a tool that we use for sales enablement. So we can go in and look at which of the sales materials our sales team is using or our customer success team is using on a regular basis or with the most frequency. And from that kind of extrapolate that that's where they find value when speaking with our customers, which is another quantitative piece of feedback. And then finally, product analysis, which is also super important. So, especially now, I think with COVID and what's going on, people are changing the way that they interact with technology. We're seeing that. I know a lot of other tech companies are seeing that. But to really partner with your product management counterpart and say, like, what's changing in the product, or how many people are logging in, how frequently, what features are they using, what are their paths what are the most frequent paths that they're using when they're in the product. So those are, I think, some really good ways to start to get some feedback on your audience, whether you're new or whether you've been there for a while. And then some of the deliverables that might come out of this, customer segments. I think I did mention that you can do a large scale segmentation study, but I think you can build customer segments on your own, independent of quantitative research, based on what you hear from all those different methods of gathering feedback. I know our team is really busy right now developing personas for marketing to use that have different messages that will kind of resonate with those different personas. So that's something that I think I've seen value with personas, not just from a marketing perspective, but also with the sales team. They tend to really like it when marketing says, hey, these are the different people we're looking for in the market. These are the different messages that we think will resonate. A document that outlines the top concerns of those customers or of that target audience with the problems that you're trying to solve and how the solution set layers up. And then another thing that I think is something that I've seen work really well, especially when you're on the very new side of developing either a product or you're trying to launch something new into market, is an empathy workshop. And what I've done there is work with product design counterparts as well as the research team to develop packets of information that we then showcase with all the different stakeholders who are both building the product and taking the product to market, and really develop a shared understanding of who those customers are. So I wanted to show you an example deliverable of this. This was when I was at Etsy and we were actually launching a brand new marketplace for craft supplies. And we had a new target audience called DIY Dreamers, and we'd done quantitative and qualitative research, and we compiled this packet that was probably 13, 14 pages long that really just immersed everyone in the workshop in who this person was, what they cared about, and really enabled us to have a very interactive workshop. So that's kind of one of the outputs, and happy to talk through any of that, or kind of answer questions. And this is kind of what this GIF is animates, and it said that she kind of looks at you like, oh, wow, I get it. So point being, you've got a lot of research to do, but once you find that target audience, it's like a light bulb goes off, both for you and for your commercial team, as well as the product team. So I think this is like the crux of everything, is who are you trying to target, which is why we spend a little bit more time on it. If you don't get this right, nothing else falls into place. So this is kind of the first thing. It's the most important to me. Next comes, articulating the words to use. So there are, again, different ways to get those inputs. You can do a massive messaging, a massive body of research around messaging, and really try to understand what words resonate at scale. Or you can do it scrappy and in-house using some of those methods that we talked about earlier. You can test messaging in media. This is something that has been really interesting, to put, 10 different paid ads into market and see which one resonates the most, which one gets the most traffic if you're trying to drive prospects to a landing page and use that as a way to benchmark what messages or words are resonating most. And then also ensuring that you're maintaining that sales loop, that feedback loop with your sales and support counterparts. And then output, number one, which I think is challenging all the time because it's constantly evolving and it's our job to stay on top of it. But what is that messaging architecture for your market and for your customer? What is your value prop? Providing proof points and claims, and then prioritizing the features and messages that resonate with that audience. And I just want to take a second on point number 3. I think companies that have really powerful product marketing tend to have quantitative proof points. So for example, with Diligent, for us, that would be how many headcount are you able to save by using our technology solution? Or how much money are you able to save in terms of man hours or in terms of consulting fees that you have to spend to do the work that we enable you to do with our technology? And I think especially as we think about going to market, that's those proof points and claims that you can make are so powerful at the top of the funnel, but all the way through. And they really do help the decision maker internally advocate, or they help the buyer advocate for the technology. So I think building those early and often is really important. And then I just put this here as like a nice visual. So what is a messaging architecture composed of? Or what are the different inputs? It's that segmentation and customer research. You've got your value proposition. You've got your product strategy. Sometimes we have a very defined identity system. Sometimes that's changing if we're a newer technology or a newer product or we're going through an evolution. But all of that should inform our messaging architecture. So point 3 is really around the most impactful channels. Everyone's audience is going to have a different kind of is going to have a different priority on how they like to learn about and understand new technology. So the questions that I like to ask as we go through the funnel, here I know we can articulate it in many different ways, but thinking about awareness to consideration, usage, and then customer retention or advocacy. The 3 big questions that I like to ask are, where are your customers and prospects hanging out? Where are they getting information? Which channels are you getting the most traction with? And I think there it's very important to be closely aligned in particular with your demand gen partners to know, for my business line, is it SEO? Are we driving a lot of organic traffic? Is paid media, paid search really important for us? Is it the partnerships channel or co-marketing that's really driving those leads? And that's kind of, we need to take a step back and look holistically about where we're getting traction. And then finally, how do these channels map to the marketing funnel? So understanding which channels are important across these different aspects of the funnel. So for example, for the different companies that I worked for, once we find a user and once we have a user on our platform, getting word to them about new products and features happens sometimes best over email. Sometimes it's better within the product and product prompts. But for example, at Diligent, we've got very busy corporate directors who are using our products. So they don't necessarily want to see in-product pop-ups. That doesn't work for our audience. So we have to come up with new and creative ways to drive those product marketing messages once we're in the retention, usage and retention space. So it's different depending on where you're working. I'm going to pause there. So we just talked about defining our target audience, articulating the words to use, and identifying the most impactful channel. Are there any questions or follow-up that folks would like to talk about before we move on to knowing your market? Okay. And we'll progress through. So the next thing is around knowing your market. And here, the most important thing to me is architecting the competitive landscape. This is something that, again, can take a lot of time, or it can be done fairly quickly. What I like to do is, you're having those conversations as you're getting to know your customers with sales, support, customer success, the product teams, and your marketing peers. Ask them what's going on in the field. We've been running into some new competitors in the market. And we found out about that through our new sales team, who said, hey, we're really hearing customers bring up this new competitor a lot more frequently. And we've, as a result, started to do a deep dive on that customer. So keep up those relationships and those conversations and have them on a regular basis. Next, read all those review sites. I know G2 Crowd, Capterra are two that we're looking into right now, and I have been at several different roles. So I think that's those are like gold. I think the other thing is you can use those in your marketing, which is a really good place to go to get customer feedback or quotes that you can pull into your marketing. Dig into your competitor sites, look at Crunchbase. And this is ongoing work. I think it needs to be refreshed on a quarterly basis, or when a competitor makes a big move. I think it's really important that each PMM feels ownership and responsibility over the competitive landscape for their product line. And then I'm just going to pause and say that there are different technologies. I think Clue and Crayon are two that I've either looked at or used. I've used Crayon at MailChimp to kind of gather this competitive feedback. And I do think that they have a lot of value, but you need someone who can manage that. So I think, you have to be at a certain scale to have someone who can manage that, or defining the competitive landscape has to be such an important component of your day-to-day job that you really do need to have that technology to support you. I see, Laura, Lona, you have a question. Which I'm just going to answer real quick. What are some examples of where customers and prospects are hanging out? So yeah, I think, and this is obviously going back to knowing your customers. Social media, absolutely. Associations, yeah, that's a really good point. We have a lot of nonprofits who also use some of our tools. They rely a lot on their industry associations to get information and guidance, as do we also have some customers in the public sector. And associations there play a big role. So absolutely, that also provides an opportunity for co-marketing or for joint marketing exercises. And the other thing we do when we have regular kind of NPS and customer satisfaction surveys. We also ask them where they gather their information. So in addition to the different places that you mentioned below, we would also put things like, what websites are you using to get information? Which thought leaders are you following? LinkedIn is another one that's really big for B2B. So, is there anyone that you're following on LinkedIn? What media or what news outlets are you reading? So those are kind of the big questions that we would ask. Influencers, I think, is the same thing as what I was just saying, right? It's who do you go to when you need information on the topic at hand? For us, it's governance. And how to govern corporations or nonprofits, et cetera. And analysts, yeah, that's another great one as well. So happy to do a follow-up when we get to the end if you have any other follow-ups on that. So continuing with architecting the competitive landscape, I just kind of wanted to give, so one of the things I try to do in this talk is give some tactical examples, and this will all be online. I believe, and Max can chime in at the very end, how to get access to these slides if anyone wants them. One of the things that I like to do at a high level, very rough, this is an example I have from another previous position, defining the competitive landscape, taking the different competitors, and on the left-hand side where you see what's the operating system, do they have collaboration, do they have performance capabilities, is it all in one? These are kind of the product features or the features that customers are looking at in order of ranked priority. And then below, of course, pricing. And so mapping out like red, green, yellow. So the circle with the white in the middle, and then the lighter pink, and then the red pink kind of shows the completeness of the solution. And this I find is a really good kind of one-page summary to lead conversations with product marketing or with marketing, with sales, and with the product team. So that's just one kind of visual that I like to use. And then another really good cut that someone on my team at MailChimp came up with, which I really liked and led to a lot of great conversations, is talking about, and this was especially at MailChimp, we were evolving from being an email marketing solution to a marketing platform. So we were going through an evolution. And one of the questions we were asking ourselves is what are the competitors known for today, and what's their current state, and what are they well positioned to build out in the future? And to me, this is a really important view to have when you're in a hyper competitive market, and you really have to think about, build, buy, and partnering. So what could your competitors do that would enable them to get into a new space relatively quickly? What target audience do they have? Do they have really good ties with today, and where could they go in the future? And then analyzing yourself relative to that. So this, I think, is another really good framework that I've seen guide, in particular, really strong conversations with executives or with leadership teams, if you're trying to have kind of elevate the conversation to that level. And then I put this in here. This is not something that I developed, but obviously you've got your kind of quadrant map. I think it's important for us to see what's on the different review sites, but then also with these different inputs. So we just look through a way to think about features that maybe the competitor sites, the review sites, are not thinking about. We looked at current state versus future state. What does that map look like from your perspective, and add that in? And I think also there's this is a very powerful tool for a product marketer to use with their business owners to say, hey, I think the landscape is shifting, or I think we're not quite thinking about ourselves right in the market. This is how I would like for us to start talking about ourselves. And I think this is another really good framework for those conversations. So then we're going to move into the third area, which is building strong relationships. And there's 3 points here: embedding yourself in product development, bringing data back to your product team, and then building processes to scale product marketing. Before I go into that, I have our second poll, which as I was getting ready for this, Max and I were talking, Max and I were talking about relationships with product management and how that can often be a tension point, which my personal opinion is it does not have to be. So the poll is, how would you rate your relationship with product management? And I know we have some international folks on the call, so I apologize for using the American grading standards, but A is obviously good and F is failing. So I'm curious, how would everyone rate your relationship with product management? How do you feel like you are aligned with them today? And I want to talk through my experience and how I feel like the tips and tricks I would use to kind of bolster that relationship. We'll give it another second. Oh, this is great. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to give it 10 more seconds. Okay, it looks like everyone's done. So that's awesome. So this group, it looks like almost everyone says they're in a good place with their product manager. So about 2/3 of us think, an A or B relationship. So as I'm going through, feel free to put in the chat your thoughts on, what I'm sharing. If something feels super powerful, I'd love for it to be more of a dialogue, since it sounds like we've got a lot of people who've been focusing on that or feel like they're in a good space with their product management counterpart. So this is how I like to think about it. We are meant to be embedded in product development if we are core to the product managers and to that team of product managers, designers, engineers, researchers. I think they're all super important. If we are core to them, we are going to have a good stake in the business, and we are going to be able to drive strategy as well as the product roadmap. So what I have put down here, to me, there's really 4 peers that we need to be really closely aligned with. What is the focus with each of those peers? Let's see. That's a great question, Carla. I'll come back to that. So for the PM, I think the focus there, they are our partner in defining the opportunity. Where are we going? Where are we headed? And what is coming out to get us there? And I think our focus when working with them should be to broaden their horizon and perspective by bringing the outside in, bringing the market in, as well as bringing consolidated customer feedback. when it comes to our product designer, I think that they are the collaborator on customer empathy. They're also trying to look at the product in the market through a lens of empathy. So focusing there on what the personas are and what their key problems are to solve, and how our technology solutions support our customers in doing so. Engineers, I think, are often a function that can be overlooked, but I've actually found a lot of power uh, in building close relationships with engineers. I think that they, more than us challenging them, I think we do challenge. I think marketers can challenge engineers, but I think they can also challenge us, and I think um, they can often be a quiet voice in the background. Whereas if you build that relationship and get to know the engineers, they often have really powerful uh, tips, tricks, ideas, thoughts about how you can better serve the customers that they're not often as vocal about. So I think, there to me, it's really about building that one-to-one relationship and riffing on new ideas and perspectives to identify opportunities. They often get really excited when you talk about partnerships or integrations or how we can better leverage our API. And I think just having that kind of shared vision with the engineer, the product manager, and the product marketer, I think can be really exciting and take you much further into the future much quicker. And then finally, research. If you're lucky enough to have dedicated researchers, they are obviously an avenue to better understand our customers. One tactical thing that I have done with research in the past is when they are doing UX research or rounds of research, handing off value propositions and messages that we want them to test with that target audience, and having them reserve, 5 to 15 minutes at the beginning or end of a round of research, so that we can get that iterative feedback. And it often helps us refine our messages way before we go to market. I'm going to pause there and let's see. Carla has asked, how are you managing to embed yourself in product development while remote working? I'm used to a small team being able to have water cooler conversations or quickly look at the screen or even overhear things. I think this is a great question. I would love to see other people respond in the chat. I think what I didn't say this, I'm just back from maternity leave 4 weeks ago. So I'm still kind of working on this in the new, it's the first time that I've been fully remote because I was away for the first part of the year, or from March up until August. For me, it's really been difficult because those one-on-one relationships happen in meetings now, and the meetings are less casual, I think, than what you're alluding to. So I'd love to hear what others have to say. I don't have any great solutions right now, but maybe some others can chime in, and we can talk about that at the end as well if no one else picks that up. So why do we align with these 4 different functions? It's really about building a shared vision for go-to-market strategy, and having these the different functions in the product development space be advocates for what your strategy and your vision is. And then what can we do for our product team? I think there's a couple different buckets of insights that I try to bring back to the product team. One is around marketing KPIs. So, often we release a product, we have all this marketing, and we don't go back to our product team and say, hey, I just want to show you, which events and which content got the most engagement, how we drove site traffic, or how we drove new signups, how we drove traffic to the landing page. That is often super powerful, and it creates a sense that we're accountable for our marketing work. And I think it also leads to, again, those conversations about where we're going in the future. Also bringing back any sort of brand work that the marketing team does. The product team doesn't often get insight into that. So, how are we doing with NPS? That might be a number that they would see, but, what are the brand associations, and how are we performing relative to that? How are our competitors performing relative to that? So I think that's an asset that we can bring to that team. And then, if you do conduct any sort of product survey, I always like to put in there awareness of features, the percentage of our target audience using a competitor, and use that to also help the product team understand the broader landscape. And then finally, so that's more tactical on KPIs, and then we can get much more strategic, thinking about where the marketing team is going from a thought leadership perspective, or are you developing any sort of annual report, and how can the product team support that? How are we trying to show up at conferences and events? What is our visual representation of the product? What does that look like? And then how do you envision leveraging partners from a marketing perspective? I think this has been really interesting in organizations where we've relied heavily on integrations with other technology and thinking about co-marketing, which I mentioned several times. And then finally, building processes to scale product marketing. So, the thing that I have seen be the most powerful, we've done it at MailChimp, I've done it at Etsy, we've done it at Diligent. It is just super powerful for the product marketing team to develop launch tiers in partnership with their product management partners. And here, we have 4 tiers where it's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. The highest priority all the way through, an incremental feature add-on that's not really something that we want to make a splash with in market and is more just something that we need to be able to reference if a customer has a question about it. The accompanying 2 documents that go with that launch tier is a view of the roadmap by launch tier. So what's coming out, over the next quarter, how are we thinking about it? Where are we providing the most marketing support? And then also the deliverables. So I think having a shared understanding of what deliverables accompany each of the different tiers and having that be very crisp and visual has also led to a lot of really good conversations, and also just clarity and a feeling from the product management team that their launches are getting the support that they need. I will say just a quick note on this, that just because in tier 1 there are 20 different activations that could happen, it does not mean that they're all activated for every launch. It is more of a menu. And as the product marketer, our job is to decide what is the most pertinent and important and powerful for the upcoming launch. So the last thing that I want to talk about, and then we'll do a little bit of Q&A, is creating your vision. And I know there were several of you who said this is really difficult. I think, we talked through those 3 buckets earlier. Those are all part of the vision. It's understanding your customers, knowing the market, and building strong relationships, knowing how you're going to tackle those 3 things, as well as how you're going to build out a team. And I think this really gets into whether you are an independent PMM and you're the only PMM at your organization at a small startup, if you're new to the function and you're working with someone else who's leading the function, or you are in a role where you are building out a product marketing team and that responsibility is yours. I think having a vision, whether it's how you're going to address those first 3 buckets, or whether it's how you're going to hire a team. And I think, you could substitute, again, instead of thinking about a team, you could substitute an individual here as well. So how are you going to align your work? So, the 5 elements to this to me are building a vision and structure either for yourself or for your team, aligning to business priorities. And this has to be super clear, because otherwise, and when I talked about earlier, you can feel like a pinball. What are the business priorities? What are you supporting? And that's where you really focus your time and effort, which ties very closely to ensuring that you can demonstrate revenue impact. And I think if you can do that, if you can demonstrate revenue impact and how you're supporting the business priorities, product marketing often has an easier time getting more resources and support down the road. When it comes to hiring, these last 2 points, I think whenever I do any sort of interviews to bring on a new product marketer, I always include some sort of case study, typically around either the go-to-market strategy to see how they think through that, or around messaging, because I think messaging is such a crucial part of being a good product marketer. And then finally, one opportunity I think right now with organizations, we're all kind of in flux. I love to hire interns for discrete projects. A couple things that I'm thinking about right now are, persona or vertical deep dives. If you know you have something really important, how do you bring on an intern for a discrete project and really have them support you, again, to align to business priorities and demonstrate revenue impact? Emma asked, I think this is a great question, how has your hiring process changed because of COVID? To be honest, it really hasn't. I mean, the only thing that's changed is that we're not doing those in-person rounds of interviews, but everything is conducted online the same way that we were doing it prior. And I'll just real quickly, for 2 seconds, explain. We have the hiring manager do an initial phone screen, and then typically one or two other members of our team will do a follow-on phone screen just to kind of get a couple, 2 to 3 thumbs up. And then we go into the broader round of interviews with, our product management counterparts, potentially sales or other commercial team members. And that's when we do the case study, and then also bring in, if relevant, other senior marketing leaders. And then we make a decision after that. So we typically have about 2 rounds, and then the hiring manager as well as myself will probably speak to the person 2 times each. But nothing's really changed for us because of COVID in terms of the process. I think we are a lot more thoughtful about how we share our company culture and how we think about, setting expectations for the role, because often that's done in person. And I think there's just a lot more distance between us and candidates just because we're not physically together. Anyone else, feel free to chime in. So with that, I'm just going to wrap up and leave you with 3 thoughts before Q&A. One is, I think if product marketers, we need to be thinking about ourselves as many GMs or general managers. We own business lines. We are owning both product and revenue results. And how do we impact those 2 different things? How do we bring net new opportunities to the teams that we work with across the organization? And, a few buckets are competitor intel, customer insights, marketing performance, a new A/B test we're running in paid advertising, but constantly bringing that feedback instead of feeling like we're on the receiving end. How do we provide more context to our counterparts? And the people who've been super successful in a product marketing function are constantly thinking about this. And then know your customer, know your market. If you've got those 2 things down, you are almost always set up for success. And this guy has got the vision. He's got the kind of light coming out of his forehead. He knows where he wants to go. He's got everything in place, and he's kind of moving towards that vision. So I hope that you all feel a little bit more prepared to do that after this conversation. I will say thank you. And please reach out to me on LinkedIn. I put my LinkedIn, unfortunately, it's not a nice URL, but I put the URL in there. I'd love to connect with anyone who's on the talk. Feel free to message me. Stay in touch. We definitely have a lot of openings at Diligent this year. We'll have more next year in product marketing, in content strategy. Feel free to reach out if you're interested in learning more. And with that, I will ask for any questions. How do you go about presenting those findings well? Tanya, that's a great question. There's 2 things that I would recommend. I think one is having a 1 to 3 page written document that kind of outlines what you did and your key findings. I think often we rely too much on PowerPoint presentations that have to have a voiceover. And it depends on the organization, but I think often that 1 to 3 page written document really helps to get everyone in alignment. The other thing I would try to rely on as much as possible is those frameworks that kind of consolidate a large deck into one slide. So if you remember, let me just see if I can get back to it real quick. I'll show you the one. Like, this is a good visual. I think it takes what could be, a 40-page deck, and it consolidates it into one slide to talk at the high level. And then if someone says, oh, wow, platform B looks really interesting, I'd really like to go deeper into that, you've got that backup, but you can kind of bring everyone to the same place through one visual or a couple of visuals. And I think the other one that I would reference as well, for example, when talking about, product launches and how the product marketing team is going to be supporting it, having this calendar view that says, this is what we're going to work on, and these are the different frameworks, or these are the different tiers of launches. And then someone could say, oh, wow, I really want to talk about that tier 1 launch that's coming out in November. And then you can go deeper from there. So I think we are often sitting at the confluence of a lot of different information. So as much as we can consolidate that so that we can have crisp conversations and really have the backup, but not feel like everyone has to read through everything. That I think is really important. Matthew asks, what are your absolute top PMM tools? That is a really good question. I don't feel like we have product marketing specific technology right now. I don't feel like we're in that place. I think it's a relatively new function, particularly in the technology arena, in terms of like kind of it is now seen as its own function within marketing much more independently than I think it was even 5 to 7 years ago. So I don't think that there are solutions built specifically for us. I think the tools, maybe I mentioned Crayon and Clue as competitor insights. I think those are really good. They do take manpower to manage those. Otherwise, you're spending money on technology that you can't get the most out of. So I think that's one caveat. The other tools that I think have become very powerful, Salesforce and getting those reports if you're a sales oriented organization, as well as whatever sales enablement materials or sales enablement platforms you have. So, Showpad is what we use for documentation, and then whatever training platform you have, I think is also super important. The other thing I would say that feels important is how you build content, whether that is written content, whether that's video content. I think having vendors, we're reliant on vendors right now. We don't have a huge in-house agency, which some organizations have, some organizations don't. But how do you get those quick product videos spun up? How do you get your explainer videos up and out into market? How do you create customer testimonials? And again, I don't have technology for that. It's more vendors that we use. But if you want to speak more about that or have questions, feel free to ping me, or you can ask a follow-up in here. Thanks for that question, Matthew. So Joanna says, are there specific templates that you like to use, or do you create your own? The answer to this is I have brought templates with me between my roles, as have people on my team. And so we will often scrap what was from another organization in terms of the content and use that framework. I have gotten smarter about that as I have moved through my career and recognize that when I do build a template for a launch tier framework, for example, I will bring that with me. Not the proprietary information inside of it, obviously, but I will bring that framework so that I don't have to recreate it. But I will plug the Product Marketing Association. They have a really great library of templates that they're building out. And my team has also started to depend on those or to use those. So I think that's a great starting point. It's often very overwhelming to feel like you have to start everything from scratch. So I would recommend to go to that library. I don't know, Max, whether you can put that in that URL in here. It would be helpful in the chat, or we can follow up after the call with that library, because it is a really good resource. Thank you for that, Joanna. And then Bella, you say, what kind of skills do you look for in the hiring process? Are there any roles that you think have good transferable skills? This is actually something I've been thinking about a lot. We actually have product marketers on our team with very different skill sets. And one of the things I think about is how we build a holistic skill set across the team. So not feeling like every product marketer has to have the exact same background. A couple of adjacent spaces that I think are really important to have on the team. If you are B2B and you are selling through a sales team, I think having someone with sales enablement experience is really important. We just hired a woman who came from that background. I also love having people who have either worked in sales or worked on the SDR side, so driving demos. So we have that empathy with a commercial organization. That's number one. The other two buckets of background or skills that I'll mention: having experience working on other arms of the marketing team. So whether you've been in a demand gen function, we have a woman on our team who previously ran demand gen for one of our business lines. And that is a great she has a lot of capability to kind of have deep conversations with that business and go in and look at what's happening and do we have any quick fixes that we want to recommend. So I think having that skill set is also really important. And then the other thing I would say is someone who's come from more of a consulting background and has experience in pricing, packaging. I see that as very valuable, or even market research, developing market opportunity. So total addressable markets, market sizing. I think that's another really valuable skill set. The thing I'll end on is product marketers are we do a lot and we go into a lot of different spaces and we have to have a lot of different skill sets. So I just don't feel like there's one specific background that works. I think that there's a lot of different ways you can enter into the product marketing space. And I didn't mention content strategy is another really good one, or coming from the support function. I've also had people on my teams who've come from those two areas. I think it's really about where your team is today, where your strengths are, and where you feel like you need to go in the future, and building out a fairly robust set of skill set that means that you can kind of address all those different opportunities and have someone on your team who has deep experience, who can kind of educate and drive those functions for the rest of the group. I think that was the last question. If there are any other questions, let's see, we got 4 more minutes on the clock, so happy to answer anything else. Otherwise, we can wrap a couple minutes early.
Thank you, Brittany. Thank you very much for the presentation, and also thanks for everyone who asked questions. And there's another one from Laura.
Yeah, Laura, I'll take that real quick. Is there conflict with product managers? There's always a rub, I hear. I think there's always overlap in those two functions. I have been in places where there is a lot of conflict, and I have been in places where there is a lot of synergy or capability of working together. The advice that I give product marketers when they're trying to build relationships and they're having a tough time is to try to bring something net new to the table. So product managers have a list this long of things that they're trying to do, and how can you take some of that off of their plates that they don't have to do it? Typically that tends to be looking at the competitors and looking at the market and bringing feedback from the commercial function if you have a sales organization. So that's where I would encourage people to really focus in order to build those relationships. The more you can give to them, the more of a seat you get at the table. Thanks, Laura.
Yeah, and that looks like all the questions for now. We're pretty much bang on the hour, only a few minutes left, so good job on that as well. But yeah, thanks once again, Brittany. Really good to speak to you again. Thank you to everyone for asking such good questions, and voting on both the polls as well. It's good to see people really makes the talk deliver a lot of value. And I think with that, we'll probably wrap things up. So enjoy the rest of Washington, Brittany. Hope to speak to you soon. And thanks everyone else for tuning in. Hope to see you soon as well.
Thanks, everyone. Great to talk to you today. Bye.